Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, a Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post for Purim is going to discuss the idea of drinking wine on Purim. That there seems to be there's an obligation of drinking wine on Purim. As we're told that if we drink wine, nichnas yayin, yotze soid, that it will reveal secrets, which seems to be, if we're looking at it on an adaptive level, it's to be able to obtain deeper levels of Torah understanding, a deeper level of a connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I'd like to use psychodynamic explanation and interpretation as a way to understand this, to gain some understanding and the meaning of what is the secrets that we are trying to obtain on Purim that perhaps we would not be able to reach throughout the rest of the year, or we would not be able to obtain if not under the influence of alcohol or some wine. What are these secrets that we are trying to reveal? So if we look at Matan Torah, Matan Torah was the event when we received the Torah. Was seen obviously as one time of receiving the Torah, and the Gemara tells us that Purim was also that we received again or accepted again the Torah, this time out of Ahava as opposed to Yira. So we were receiving the Torah on Purim, and the Torah was related by HaKadosh Baruch Hu through Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Bnei Yisrael heard the Torah. This was the time where they received and heard the message of the Torah in its purest form, what the Torah contained. But what we can say is, as we see throughout the years, throughout the generations, and if we just look at the essence of what is Limud Torah, Talmud Torah, there are layers and layers of interpretation, of understanding, of Mefarshim, and in a way, every person has their own connection with the Torah, their own connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and that the Torah is actually, in a way, each individual has their own interpretation of what the Torah, of what Limud Torah is. This doesn't mean that we can deviate from the emes of the Torah. We understand that there is an ultimate emes to the Torah. And although there are 70 faces, Shivim Panim the Torah, that is based on the understanding that the wisdom of the Torah is so vast and expansive and delves into so many different areas of life that it allows a certain level of discussion. It's inbuilt. The process of Limud Torah is that there is discussion, there is machlokes. There are different ways of viewing and coming to an understanding, but all of it is based on the idea of Elu V'Elu Divrei Elokim Chayim, that is based on the ultimate emes. But there is, as we see, part of the system of learning Torah is that there is interpretation, and we can say that even though the Bnei Yisrael were given the purest message of the Torah at Har Sinai, everybody heard the Torah, but when you hear something, it now enters into your own personal realm. It is now your property, we can say, and it depends on how you interpret the message. Hopefully it's still based on the emes of the Torah, but it opens up a certain level of subjective understanding and subjective interpretation that is based on your own interpretation of what you are hearing. And if we look at the psychodynamic understanding and looking at the psychodynamic process, we can try to get greater clarity of what this actually means, of the personal, individual interpretation of every individual. Because if we look at the Freudian understanding of psychodynamic, psychoanalytical process, it's sometimes termed as the archaeology of the mind or archaeology of memory, that you can go back and look at past events and see how it is impacting on the individual in their present life. And the role of the therapist perhaps is to be the explainer, that they look at these events that are coming up in the therapeutic discussion, and they try to help by explaining to the client what is the meaning and what is the interpretation. But through a more up-to-date, a more modern understanding of psychodynamic therapy, it is moving away from this and seeing that actually the client, the therapist and the client are engaged in a relationship, are engaged in an interaction. And through that, when the therapist is trying to give support, help, guidance in a way, we have to understand that the client is in a position where they now can interpret what the therapist is saying, and it's up to the client to decide how they understand, how they interpret, how they will then apply the lessons or the levels of understanding that they are gaining from the therapeutic interaction, how they then will interpret it and apply it in their life. But what we see is there is a relational factor here between the therapist and the client. That once there is a message being conveyed or being shared in the therapeutic relationship, the client is receiving this message, and it now but therefore belongs to them, and it's in their property, and it's therefore theirs to interpret. And it's important in the psychodynamic aspect of the relationship in the therapy that the client and the therapist also acknowledges this relational factor, this level of interpretation, and therefore can help the client understand what comes up, what emotions and what feelings, what thoughts come up in the relational interaction with the client, with the therapist, and based on the content that is coming up in the therapeutic relationship. Therefore, there is something which is critical to understand what is going on in the here and now, in the messages that are being shared, are being conveyed from therapist to the client, and how the client is interpreting that message. So if we take this understanding of the psychodynamic relational factor and interpretation of meaning through communication, this is what we can see from Har Sinai. Har Sinai was a communication. It was the purest form of conveying the message of the Torah. But as we see, interpretation is part of Limud Torah. It's part of also being able to understand and connect with the Torah. Because in a way, every person cannot be expected to understand the Torah and to connect with the Torah like it was given in Har Sinai, because of maybe Yeridas Adoros, or because every individual person has their own cognitive capacity, their own emotional relationship with the Torah and with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and that influences their interpretation of the Torah. And that influences, and that's how we can come to, we need to have different layers of interpretation, different layers and levels of understanding of the Torah, because each person interprets and connects with the Torah on their level. As long as we said, it's still within the realm of MS, each person connects with the Torah on their level, based on their ability of interpretation and their individual interpretation. But Purim gives us the opportunity to delve into as we said, we can delve into the purest level. We can see that the relationship between each individual person and the Torah and the Kodesh Baruch Hu is dynamic. And actually, through drinking wine, we can hopefully say that we acknowledge this ongoing relationship. We acknowledge this relational factor, this psychodynamic factor in the Torah relationship and the Torah process that we are going through. And Torah, the wine, will hopefully allow us to connect in the purest form with the deepest levels of Torah, with the purest level and connection with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, even like that which we experienced at Har Sinai. Have a great Shabbos and Purim Sameach.